Merhabalar, Amerika da Soylesilere hoş geldiniz. Bugün yanımda çok değerli bir dostum var ve onunla education yani eğitim konuşacağız. Thank you so much for doing it with me.
Oh, I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Could you please introduce yourself to us?
My name is Hope Ross. I'm a math resource teacher, and that means I'm a teacher in an elementary school with little kids, and I work there to help teachers become better teachers and to help kids be better learners of math. I teach in a school in Fairfax County, Virginia, that has a very high immigrant population. Most of our immigrants are from Central America.
Let's ask this general question. It's going to be a huge question, but I hope you'll get a good outcome to us. If you just try to describe American education system here, can you please try to do it for us, like to help us to understand it better?
So the American system is public. That means every child must go to school. I think it's from the age 6 on. And kids in the United States can go to preschool, but usually that's paid for by parents. So some students go to school before kindergarten, before they turn 5 or 6. And a lot of other kids don't. They stay at home with their families. What sometimes happens is the kids that go to preschool are a little bit ahead of their peers in elementary school in that they've learned to do some counting and perhaps all their letters of the alphabet or their reading has sort of begun. But the idea in the US system is that in kindergarten, that's when they learn to count and learn their letters and things like that. So even if you don't go to preschool, kindergarten is supposed to be where it all starts. So the school system goes from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, and the first school that kids go to is usually kindergarten through 5th or 6th grade, which is age 5 to age 12. And then there's middle school, which is usually 7th and 8th grade, we say, which is 13 and 14, and then 15 to 18 is high school, or 9th to 12th grade. The federal government, the government of the United States, lets states decide what kids need to learn and what those standards are, what's important. And for the most part, many states follow something called the Common Core, which was researched and created through government funding. But the state of Virginia does not do that, and there are a number of other states that don't. Still, what they say kids need to learn follow certain guidelines that are pretty standard. And really what they're focusing on is what's going to be helpful for students in the future, what's going to make them contributing members of society, what's going to make them innovators, what's going to make them good global citizens, in addition to what reading and math and other skills they could learn. So then as an elementary teacher, usually what my role is, if I was just a classroom teacher, right now I work in a lot of different classrooms, but as a classroom teacher, what I do is I bring students in at the beginning of the school year. I get to know them because knowing them makes it easier for them to take risks and to feel safe, to learn and try new things. And I can have very high expectations, and if it's in a safe environment. And then I also get to know their families because in the United States, our education system says that families are the experts in their children. And so we want to work together in a partnership with families for the benefit of the children. So you'll find that most school systems have activities at school for families to come in, whether it's a math night or a reading night or an international fair. It's all about bringing the families, the community into the school so we can all work together.
True. Let me ask that. If our students in a primary level. I mean, kindergarten to middle school, or kindergarten level.
Yes.
I mean, kindergarten to 5th grade, 6th grade level.
Yeah.
So what we should expect from school, what school expect from parents?
In elementary school, usually you expect a little bit of homework. Current research that has been in lots of newspapers says that in primary school and when the little kids are in school, that homework doesn't have a lot of benefit. So a lot of teachers now say, we don't do homework, we just want kids to be kids and play at home and be sure to read every night, because reading's really important.
True.
That said, a lot of families, parents think that homework is really important for helping to build responsibility and giving students additional practice. So we have, some disagreement, and so there's a big variety, sometimes even within a school, as to how much homework kids are given.
So you mean we shouldn't be surprised if we do not get any homework?
You shouldn't be, and you can also ask. You can say, tell me what your homework philosophy is. What do you think about homework? What's the purpose of homework? What should I expect coming home? I have 2 kids, and one of my kids frequently tells me he has no homework when he does in fact have homework. So being in touch with the teacher in the school only helps you know what's going on and helps them do their job better if they're expecting things to be completed at home.
So important questions coming. A lot of us, we are lack of English, and we feel hesitate to ask questions, or we don't know the way to find the resources. What you can suggest us? What we should do?
I have never been put in a position to have to advocate for my children and not be able to speak the language. So having said that, parents are their children's #1 advocates. And so if you come to a school, or if you send a note to school, especially in the bigger counties, there are oftentimes people within the school who can do some translating.
Perfect.
Or we can find it, definitely in Fairfax County, it's a huge county, we have translators that we can request at no cost. But the most important thing is, even if you feel insecure in your ability to speak English, to go into the school, show your face, be friendly, and make sure that the school knows you want to be partners with them, because you want to help your child.
Yes.
And the way it's supposed to be is the school should be grateful for that. They should be happy and welcoming to have you with them. Maybe not in every instance does it work out that way, but I don't think, when people stand back, that anybody could ever fault a parent for wanting to advocate for their child and for doing it.
So which kind of resources our kids are getting from school? I mean, as a ESL?
So most counties, when you enroll, or most places, when you enroll your child, they'll give you a home language survey or something like that, and they will determine if you are in need, or if your child is in need of language services. So I know very well in Fairfax County, they'll help place your child in an age-appropriate grade level. So they even if your child doesn't know any English, they will put them in with other children who are their age, and they will also give them something called an ELL. ELL stands for English Language Learner. They'll give them a level, and a level 1, it means that they're fairly new to the country. They don't have much English, and then each year they're assessed on their speaking and writing and listening and reading to make sure that they are gaining skills along the way. In Virginia, test scores for children who are new to the country do not count for the first 11 semesters that they're here. So that's roughly 5.5 years where their test scores are not held against them or held against the school that they go to. But that means if your child comes to school in kindergarten before the end of elementary school, we're expecting them to be on grade level and speaking in English. Research shows that you're not fully, most people are not fully fluent in academic language until they're here for 7 years. So it can be a challenge for kids. And so this county, and I'm sure many others, but I can only really speak officially about this county, we have ELL teachers. So teachers that sometimes will pull students out of the classroom if they feel that's necessary. Other times, and most of the time in my school, the ELL teachers are partnered with the classroom teachers, and they spend the bulk of their time in the classroom with English-speaking children and ELL students of all levels.
That's great. Like, it sounds to me there's a great support system at school for the kids, and especially for the parents too, like whoever want to involve. So this word I heard very often with the school system, parent involvement. What we should understand that? Like, what is the parent involvement?
Parent involvement. So there's even, it's funny, because I teach in the same county where my children go to school, and there's something called a parent involvement survey that comes around, and it talks about how welcoming your child's school is to you, and how well you know their teachers and things like that. And again, that's because there's a strong belief that if you work with the families and if you reach out to the families, that it is only for the benefit of children. Of course, and I said this before, I think there are teachers that are nervous having parents come in. You know, they're worried that they're not doing the right thing, or that parents will criticize them if they don't like the way something is going. And sometimes that does happen on both sides. But philosophically, the idea is that, hey, we want to work together. So as a teacher, and both of my children, their teachers know that I'm a teacher, and it's a special thing when you're teaching a teacher's child. You kind of look for trouble. And I always let them know I'm a teacher ahead of the game, and then I make sure that every time I email them, I thank them for the work that they're doing with my child.
That's a great suggestion, starting with thanks.
I always start with that, and I always also give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if you know this, but this is what's happening at home. What have you noticed at school? And as a teacher, that's really how I word it too. I thank you so much for working with your child at home. I know, that kind of stuff. I mean, that friendliness goes a long way in helping people to break down nerves, because as a teacher, I get nervous when parents call me sometimes because I want to do my best. And I know as a parent, I feel the same way talking to teachers, because this person spent their entire day taking care of my child, and what if I do something that they don't like? Oh no, what's that going to mean? I have found that, presuming the positive, going at things from a very friendly level and thinking, okay, I know this person wants to work with me even though I'm nervous about it, has always helped me to do better for my kids.
Okay, that's like, you give a lot of important suggestion, but this one was really important, starting with thanks message, because of course we are thankful they kept them in a safe place.
Oh my goodness,
and
yes.
Then we will share our concerns, share what's happening at home, because as being new foreign people here, immigrants, we have a trauma, and kids, their world changed too. And we are asking them to learn English as soon as possible, and they want to be successful. That's, of course, a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So you mean that if we share those informations with our teachers, our kids' teachers, they will be helpful. At least they will understand.
Remember, you want to understand where they're coming from, and you want them to understand where you're coming from. And when I went in thinking, I want to make sure you understand me, And I think I understand where you're coming from, but I have a few questions. Let me see. And I think that worked not just when you go in to visit your child's school, but any tense situation where there's possibility for conflict.
Sure.
There's so much love on our side for our children, and there's so much pride in the teachers for what they do. So I, even as an English speaker, it's a strategy that's important. And then if you've got some cultural and language differences, I think it would also be really key. But I would suggest always go from the assumption that your child's school wants to partner with you and work together with you.
I agree with you. One more question. It might be a deep question, and we are making a short video to get our audience attention, but if we have a child who has a special need, how does this work here in America?
So I have a child who has special needs, and the first thing that you need to know is there's a law called IDEA, IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it says that everybody in our country has the right, not a privilege, the right to be educated in the least restrictive environment. That means that if a child is struggling, they don't take them out of the classroom and put them in a different school or even in a different classroom. At first, they assess the child's needs. They see if there's some kind of medical issue, what we call a learning disability, and then they provide services, again, what they call the least restrictive environment, like with making things as integrated in the classroom as possible. To meet the students' needs. And then the students are also given something called an IEP, an Individualized Education Plan. And the IEP is a legal document that says this is what the child needs, this is what we have determined are going to be his or her goals for this period of time, and it's specific to each and every child. That said, you can't get an IEP without a diagnosis. So what do you do when your child is struggling in school and you think, oh, it's really taking him a long time to learn to read, or he really seems to be struggling with math. I don't think this is what is happening to the rest of the kids. So there are two ways, that two primary ways, we'll say, that you can advocate for your child if you think he or she might need an individualized education plan because they have some kind of learning disability. One is the child's teacher might come to you and say, hey, I'm really worried about this. I've talked with my colleagues. We've noticed, even though we keep offering extra help or remediation for this student, that your daughter or son is not progressing. So we would like to perform some tests. And they just take the child out of class. There's nothing on the parent other than to sign a paper that says, yes, please test my child. I'm worried too. And then they work with you through the process. They tell you what the test results are, and if that means they can have, if they can get additional services from a special ed teacher a special education teacher works very similar to an ELL teacher for language. In terms of being in the classroom with teachers in most schools.
But we should be also one who will speak up, right?
Right.
So we shouldn't wait only from teachers.
So the one way is for the teachers to do it, and the other way, which is the way that I went with my son, and I encourage, remember parents, you're your child's best advocate, right? Is you go to your child's teacher and you say, I'm really worried. What have you noticed? And also thank you for all your hard work. What have you noticed? And if you're finding that what you're seeing at home and what is happening there is really getting in, there's something that's getting in the way of your child's learning, that's had an impact on learning. That's what they're always looking for with a learning disability. Is there something going on in this child that's impacting his or her ability to learn at the level that I would expect? Then you can ask the school, I'd like for you to test him. And when a parent comes into a school and says that, by law, they have 10 days to respond to you. They must respond, and there's a time frame.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. These are federal, like no matter which state you are.
Yeah. Yes. That although the school systems are separate, the IEP and the IDEA, that law is federal. Absolutely. So by law, we have a special education teacher at my school who goes around to all the teachers all the time. Remember, if a parent tells you they want their child tested, you have to come and tell me right away, because the clock starts ticking. Like, we not only do we want to do well by your child, we also want to comply with these federal laws.
It's perfect. What about if our child were in a school system in Turkey and he or she was so smart, and he or she is still as smart and learn or grasp the English easily, and we believe that he or she might be GT? So what we should do?
Always advocate for your child. So some considerations are within the classroom. A very reasonable question to ask a teacher is, I notice my child gets things very quickly. What are you doing to meet his needs, if it's different, or her needs, if it's different from the other kids? I notice, I was reading online that his reading level is much higher than what's a typical third grade level, maybe you could say. And the teacher should be able to address the fact that, oh yes, well, with your son, he's in a reading group with books at this higher level. In the United States, education here, we talk about differentiating for individual needs. Every child should make a year's worth of growth, no matter where they started. So even if your child already knows third grade stuff, when he or she comes in, the expectation is that you should have as a parent, that I should have as a parent, is my child is still going to get smarter, even though he or she could pass the end of the year tests right now. So that's in the classroom. A lot of school systems, I can't speak for every, but I know mine does, has something called advanced academics. And in this school system, they have parent coffees and meetings where they educate families about what you would do if you think you might meet those criteria.
You shouldn't miss any meetings which is happening at school, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it takes time, but what is it they say? Knowledge is power. Having that information, even if you don't think your child has special education needs, even if you think your child might not need any advanced academics, or some school systems call it gifted and talented programs, but I think the language is shifting away from that right now. It's still good to know,
because we can help other people who has less English than us. Like we can be cure for other people.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
And the other thing that I've noticed in this county, and again, I've said this a bunch of times, Fairfax County is not every county in the world. It has a lot of resources. Is when I was struggling with my son, I went to school and I told them everything. Like, I was very truthful about how things are going behaviorally with my son at home, how things were going with regard to things at school, how things were going with him and his sister. And they not only provided me with educational help, but they also helped to hook me up with in-home counseling. That doesn't always happen. But those teams in schools include social workers and psychologists, along with special education teachers, if that's relevant, ELL teachers, if that's relevant, educators, administrators, counselors. So every school has a team of people who can help. And if there's some struggle that your family is going through, whether it's a death in the family or a divorce, or you're moving, and it's always helpful to tell the school so they can sort of monitor your child. And also, if you're noticing your child needs more or you need more, I have to say, all the support that my child gets at school has tremendously supported me in being a better parent.
True. Okay, one last question.
Okay.
If you like to give 3 suggestions to us as a parents to be better parents, to be effective parents, what are those might be?
So when I think of myself in terms of being a good parent, I think about offering my child experiences and, you know, opportunities for growth. And as a single mom, it's hard work. I think everybody has their challenges in parenting. So as a parent, what I have found most helpful, which is usually what most teachers will say too, to do, is one, be involved in my child's education. Get to know their teachers. I always, even if I don't send big presents, I send letters of appreciation. I make sure my kids write notes to them. The holiday time is a big time for that. Also, there's something called Teacher Appreciation Week, and the end of the, like, I make sure I thank them for all of their efforts on my child's behalf. And I did that even with teachers that I wasn't terribly happy with, because regardless, it's a long day, and I know that they're doing their absolute best. Can I help them do better? Sure. I could, as a parent, you know, involve them in some of the worries that I have, so that they can see, oh, you know, if I'm going to meet this child's need better, that might be how. Another thing besides that I would recommend is work with your child at home, but that doesn't mean do the homework with them every night. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to teach them. And in fact, if you're doing lots of their homework with them because they can't do it independently, tell the child's teacher, because that means the teaching at school is not supporting the learning the way that it should. One thing that you should always do with your child, and I always talk about research because that's kind of who I am, is read with your child every day. And even if you don't read English, read in your home language, because what that does, and this is what research says, is that your child will learn story structure and vocabulary in native language or in English. It doesn't matter. Once you learn it in one language, you can translate it to another, right? And they also get closeness to you, and they associate reading, which is really where I think a lot of learning begins, with warm, friendly ideas. And so we really want that for our kids. And the last thing that has really helped me, and it surprised me because I didn't have this so much growing up, is I have learned a lot about my child's school and my child's friends by enrolling them in extracurricular activities within the school
setting.
Not so much in the setting. I mean, that would help too. We go to Girl Scouts at school, but going to we have a pool that we go to that's nearby. We do soccer that has a lot of kids from school. We do a lot of things outside of school that gets you to know people on a more casual way, on a more casual level, and that I found it really helpful for me in making friends with the parents of my children. And then when your kid wants to visit with a classmate, you actually also have a play date for yourself.
Thank you so much. These are super grateful, and I enjoy a lot with our conversation. And there are a lot to talk also. I just realized, and thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And everything.